Welcome to the 8th episode in a Legendarium series about the life and reign of King Edward III. In Part 8, The Glory of England, we will talk about the high point of King Edward III's glorious reign. While King Edward III became renowned for his victory at Crécy, his son the Black Prince scored an equally stunning triumph at Poitiers in 1356. A day of stunning carnage for France, Poitiers saw the death of the Duke of Bourbon, the Constable of France, and one of their two marshals. They also lost the Oriflamme, the sacred red battle standard of France, said to have been dipped in the blood of Saint Denis. Prisoners taken at Poitiers, including King John II and his son, went to England while their countrymen tried to negotiate their release. Despite his failure as a war captain, King John II and his son enjoyed a comfortable imprisonment in England. He spent his kingdom's few resources on horses, falcons, musical instruments, rich clothes for his son and favorite jester, imported delicacies, and hiring a court astrologer and a private orchestra. Though known as King John the Good, he is a reminder that aristocrats and kings benefited from a harsh social order. In the end, the negotiators set his ransom at an impossible 4 million gold coins. England and France also signed the Treaty of London, ceding much of northern France to the English. The treaty might have held, if not for the sudden collapse of the French situation. When the nobles tried to collect the ransom through taxes, the peasants, who blamed the nobles for abandoning the king to the English, rose in rebellion. Jean de Venette wrote of his homeland ruined by the war and rebellion. The vines in this region were not pruned or kept from rotting. The fields were not sown or plowed. There were no cattle or fowls in the fields. Houses and churches no longer present a smiling appearance, but the lamentable spectacle of scattered smoking ruins. Yet, when Edward III sent the Treaty of London to Paris, the French aristocracy refused it. Though King John II begged him to spare France another invasion, King Edward III returned to France again in October 1359. King Edward III led a force of 10,000 men across the English Channel. This time, the French avoided direct battles and remained sheltered behind protective walls, while Edward's army looted and burned the countryside. Unable to breach the walls of Paris, Edward III led his army to the gates of Chartres, where they tried to besiege the city. On Easter Monday, April 13th, the English army camped outside Chartres in an open plain when a sudden storm appeared. The temperature dropped suddenly and thunder crashed overhead. Lightning struck and killed 2 of the English magnates. Panic set in among the soldiers who had nowhere to run and no shelter as the horses stampeded. High winds and massive hailstones, along with freezing rain, began pelting down. Within 30 minutes, more than 1,000 men and 6,000 horses lay dead. Later, this disaster would become known as Black Monday. King Edward III became convinced that the storm was a sign from God. During the climax of the storm, he dismounted his horse and dropped to his knees, reciting a vow for peace towards Chartres Cathedral. After the storm, he rushed to pursue peace with the French. On May 8, 1360, he signed the Treaty of Bretigny, agreeing to renounce his claim to the French throne in return for vast tracts of land in the north. The French also paid a huge sum for the release of King John II. This agreement marked the end of the first phase of the 100 Years' War. While not the grand reconquest of the old Plantagenet Empire that Edward III dreamed of, he had won Aquitaine, Poitiers, Calais, and Montreal, almost 25% of modern France. Meanwhile, France remained bankrupt and divided. The immense ransom of Jean II financed King Edward and his royal lifestyle. The war with France also helped form an English identity more separate from France. Ever since the Norman conquest 3 centuries prior, French had been the language of government and the aristocracy. While spoken French had been in decline for generations, King Edward III sped the removal of the French language from the ruling class. In 1362, it became law that English had to be used in the courts. In royal propaganda, King Edward III spread rumors that the French wanted to wipe the English language off the face of the earth. Within a generation, English would become the language of literature and art, with Geoffrey Chaucer composing his Canterbury Tales in English. Traveling minstrels sang new English ballads about Robin Hood, and John Wycliffe began translating the Bible into English. King Edward III spent his share of French bounty overhauling his houses. Windsor Castle became his showpiece, designed by William of Wykeham. He spent £8,500 a year building luxurious new halls, chapels, marbled cloisters, and vast apartments, one bedecked with walls of mirrors. Yet Edward III, now 50 years old in 1362, did not have uninterrupted peace. A second wave of the Black Death came to Europe, this one especially deadly to children. It wiped out 1/4 of England's young people, including the 17-year-old Princess Mary and 15-year-old Princess Margaret. This left Edward III with only 6 of his 12 children having reached adulthood. At the next Parliament, King Edward III heard many petitions and tried to remedy as many complaints as he could. He ended the harsh practice of wartime requisitions of food and animals for the army. It helped, of course, that the war had ended. The Black Prince, Edward's eldest son and heir, scandalously married his first cousin Joan of Kent, a union forbidden by the Church. Joan had been married twice before and had 5 children. She was also famously addicted to jewels and gowns. Nonetheless, Edward III blessed the marriage and made his famous son Duke of Aquitaine. The Black Prince settled near the site of his great victory at Poitiers. Edward III then began doling out other great realms to his other 4 adult sons. John of Gaunt became Duke of Lancaster, and Lionel of Antwerp became Duke of Clarence. After the old Duke of Burgundy died, Edward began to negotiate a union between his son Edmund and the Duke's surviving daughter, Margaret. Rigorous diplomacy made the marriage possible, despite their being too close for the Church's taste. After making his children great magnates, he attended to domestic affairs in 1364, empowering justices of the peace to keep the law in his shires. Yet that year, King Jean II died before his time, which meant the massive payments on his ransom ceased. Even worse, France gained a new and energetic king, Charles V, who turned to a powerful and fearsome new war captain to drive the English from France completely. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.